Right now you can close a door. That's it. That's all it takes. You close a door and suddenly you have something that billions of people take completely for granted every single day. A moment alone, a space that belongs only to you. A few minutes where nobody can see you, hear you, or know what you're doing. For the vast majority of human existence, that door didn't exist. Not the physical door, the concept. The idea that a person could or should have a space that was exclusively theirs. A moment that belonged to nobody else. Privacy as we understand it, as a right, as a need, as something worth protecting, is one of the newest ideas in human history. And the way ancient humans dealt with living without it will completely change how you think about the people around you right now. Let's start with the reality of ancient human living conditions, because most people have a completely wrong picture of what daily life actually looked like. Ancient humans didn't live alone or in couples or in small nuclear families the way most modern people do. They lived in bands. Groups of roughly 20 to 50 people who moved together, ate together, slept together, and spent virtually every waking and sleeping hour within sight and earshot of each other. Not by choice necessarily, by necessity. A single human alone in the ancient world was a dead human. Safety came from numbers, warmth came from proximity, food came from cooperation. Survival was a group project and the group never really clocked out, which means from the moment you were born until the moment you died, you were surrounded by people who knew everything about you. Every argument you had, every time you cried, every embarrassing moment, every private struggle, every physical need, all of it visible to the same 20 to 50 people you had known your entire life. There was no escaping them, and they had no escaping you. Now here's what most people assume at this point, that ancient humans must have been miserable, that the lack of privacy must have been psychologically crushing, that the constant proximity must have produced unbearable levels of stress and conflict. But the evidence suggests something completely different, and it's one of the most surprising things researchers have found when studying hunter-gatherer societies. Ancient humans weren't stressed by the lack of privacy. They were built for it. The human brain evolved in exactly these conditions. Small, tight-knit groups, constant proximity, complete transparency about the lives of the people around you. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was not an unusual living situation. It was the only living situation, and the human nervous system adapted to it completely. Loneliness, the feeling of painful isolation that plagues modern humans at epidemic levels, is not an ancient problem. It is a modern one. Created specifically by the conditions of modern life, where people live surrounded by strangers who know nothing about them and go days or weeks without meaningful human contact. Your ancient ancestors never felt lonely. Not the way you might, because loneliness requires a baseline of isolation that simply didn't exist. You cannot feel alone when you are never alone. But that doesn't mean ancient humans had no need for separation at all, because they did, just not in the way we think about privacy today. What ancient humans developed instead of private spaces was something anthropologists call social withdrawal, small, subtle signals that communicated to the group a person needed a temporary reduction in social engagement without physically removing themselves from the group entirely. Turning away from the group and facing outward, sitting slightly apart from the main cluster of people, becoming quiet and non-responsive in a way that the group recognized and respected. These weren't random behaviors. They were a social language, a way of saying I need a moment without having to say it out loud. And the group understood. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have documented that these signals are respected almost universally. When someone signals withdrawal, the group naturally reduces their engagement with that person without making it explicit or awkward. No door needed, just a shared understanding that sometimes people need a moment and the social intelligence to recognize when that moment is happening. But there were also physical strategies, and they're more creative than most people expect. Water was one of the most important sources of genuine solitude for ancient humans. Rivers, lakes, and water sources required regular individual trips for collection and bathing. These trips, often made alone or in very small groups, provided some of the only genuine physical separation from the band that most ancient humans ever experienced. The walk to the water and back was a moment of relative quiet, a break from the constant social density of camp life. Foraging provided similar opportunities. The daily task of gathering plant foods often took individuals or small groups away from the main camp for hours at a time. Moving through the landscape alone or with one other person, with no particular social obligation and no audience, was as close to genuine solitude as most ancient humans ever got. And then there's sleep. Because the way ancient humans slept was fundamentally different from how we sleep today, and it provided something that daytime life couldn't: Research on modern hunter-gatherer groups has found that the period between first and second sleep, that quiet, wakeful window in the middle of the night that existed before artificial light destroyed it, was one of the most psychologically important parts of the day. The camp was quiet. Most people were asleep, the fire was low, and lying there in the dark, not fully asleep but not fully engaged with anyone around you either, provided something that the busy social density of daytime life couldn't: a window of genuine internal quiet. A moment that belonged only to your own thoughts. That window wasn't privacy in the modern sense. People were still physically present around you, but psychologically it offered something close to what we now seek behind closed doors. A moment of separation from the social world. A chance to process, reflect, and simply exist without performing for anyone. And here's the part that should make you stop and think about your own life. Modern humans have more physical privacy than any humans who have ever lived. We have our own rooms, our own houses, our own cars, our own devices, more private space and private time than our ancestors could have imagined in their wildest dreams. And we are the loneliest humans in recorded history. Rates of loneliness in modern societies have reached levels that researchers are now describing as a public health crisis. More people than ever report having no close friends, no one to talk to about serious problems, no sense of genuine belonging to a community that knows and accepts them fully. Your ancient ancestors had none of your privacy, and they had none of your loneliness either. Because what privacy actually costs, what closing all those doors actually takes away, is the thing that the human nervous system was built to need more than almost anything else: being known, completely, by people who have no choice but to accept you anyway because you're all in this together and there's nowhere else to go. Ancient humans couldn't hide from each other. Every flaw was visible. Every struggle was shared. Every embarrassing moment was witnessed by the same people you'd see again tomorrow and the day after that and every day for the rest of your life. And somehow that complete lack of privacy produced something that most modern humans spend their entire lives searching for: a group of people who knew everything about them and stayed anyway. We traded that for a door, and most of us have been trying to find our way back ever since.